How he was able to find the truth in beauty and the beauty in the truth. So he was able to kind of combine the two, and he was able to, when he talks about finding truth in beauty, he's talking about being able to find the Dharma in beauty. And when he talks about the beauty in the truth, he's talking about finding beauty in the Dharma. And we talked a bit last week about how beauty can refine and expand our consciousness in a way that's in a way that's kind of very similar to meditation. And we talked also, didn't we, about the similarity between being absorbed in meditation and being absorbed in beauty. And both of them allow us to start going beyond the kind of world of concepts, and also beyond our sense of self. And because of that, both meditation and beauty have this sense of being more kind of attuned to how things really are. And then we talked about the ascent to beauty. So this idea that there are degrees of beauty, from the kind of sensuous to the spiritual, and then from the spiritual to the transcendental. So beauty can raise can kind of raise us from our kind of ordinary consciousness to something higher, and to a kind of point where we get more and more of our kind of sort of well-being or kind of satisfaction from the kind of spiritual plane, rather than from the kind of, you know, the realm of sense desire or something. And Bhante captures this really beautifully in a poem, which is called "It Is Not Love That Seeks to Bind." And hopefully, yeah. So I'll just read this out. It is not love that seeks to bind two bodies in a fierce embrace, nor love, true love, that dreams to find the highest beauty in a face. Love soars beyond the scathe of hands, outstrips a face, and is employed where it both sees and understands a beauty without form and void. Okay. So today we're going to, I'm going to talk about, look at this kind of subject of beauty as a kind of path to insight in the context of the lakshanas, which are the characteristics of kind of conditioned existence or samsara. So, you know, really the foundation of the whole Dharma is this idea of conditionality, that everything arises and ceases dependent on conditions. And as a result of this, everything in the universe shares these three characteristics. And in a way, this was the Buddha's great kind of, his great discovery that, you know, all phenomena are kind of impermanent. They lack inherent existence, and because of these two, they are ultimately unsatisfactory. And Bhante talks about the difference between the conditioned as it exists in reality and the conditioned as we perceive it. And this is what he has to say about it. He says, in reality, conditioned existence is painful, impermanent, insubstantial, and unattractive. Owing to our habitual self-centeredness, and other deeply rooted attachments, we imagine it to be pleasant, permanent, substantial, and beautiful, thus falling a victim to what are known as the four viparyasas, or mental perversities. Okay, so I think we have these on a slide. You might have also heard of these being called the topsy-turvy views. So on the left we have how we perceive them kind of habitually, and then on the right we have the kind of the reality of kind of conditioned existence. And just I'm going to quote Bhante again here, actually, and just to kind of put these into kind of context of how they might of how we might kind of experience them in the world. So Bhante says, and I really like this quote. He says, "Of course, most religious people, no less than other men, live as though the world was on the whole a pleasant enough place, as though whatever they acquired could never be taken away from them, and as though they were going to live for a few centuries at least, if not forever. Everyone will smile at this portrait and perhaps recognize themselves in it, but all will continue to act as before. This is because the mental perversities are not just a matter of incorrect information, like thinking that the Buddha was born in China, but attributes as deeply rooted, almost as sentient existence itself." Sorry, that was, but attitudes as deeply rooted, almost as sentient existence itself. So they're just very kind of bound up with our sense of self, and of course this perception of the world is relative. So when we talk of the condition being unattractive, it doesn't mean, for example, that we have to regard like a flower as essentially kind of ugly or something. It's just that in comparison with the beauties of the kind of higher planes of existence, those of the lower plane are just kind of insignificant. And we talked a little bit about this last week, didn't we? The idea that as we move from the karma loka, the realm of sense desire, to the rupa loka, the world of kind of subtle form that we might experience in meditation, then we just encounter a deeper beauty. Or I guess we could put it another way, which would be that the more we have a sense of the beauty of the unconditioned, the more we see the relative unattractiveness of the conditioned. Yeah. So Sangharakshita, he talks about beauty, or the relative lack of beauty of samsara, as being the fourth lakshana. So the fourth of these marks of conditioned existence, in addition to impermanence, insubstantiality, and unsatisfactoriness. So he regards beauty as or the lack of beauty of samsara is just another kind of characteristic of the conditioned. So each of the lakshanas has a corresponding gateway, door, and get a kind of glimpse of how. And these are known as the gateways to liberation. these kind of gateways into liberation are accessed when, through reflection and insight, we see through we see through the corresponding lakshana and see reality just as it is. Okay, so hopefully, I've just got a message from Stephen Argus saying I'm a bit quiet. Can people hear me okay? Or have I been...
I think it's when you kick your mic.
Okay. I'll speak. I'll try and speak a bit louder but perhaps if I'm, if it's going too quiet, perhaps give me a wave or something. Okay, so hopefully another slide will pop up. Thank you. And this shows the relationship between how we see our perception of the world, the reality of the world, and then the kind of doorway or gateway through which we can enter into kind of liberation. So we habitually see the world as pleasant, whereas in practice, it has this kind of unsatisfactoriness. And the gateway, the way we can see or become liberated is through what's called the unbiased. And I'll say a little bit more about that. So, for example, moving on to impermanence, the signless is the liberation we experience when we penetrate deeply into impermanence through kind of meditation and reflection. So it means that we no longer feel the need to label things with words or thoughts or concepts. We've kind of we transcend concepts, and we just have a direct experience of things as they are. And it's like when we have that experience, there's kind of nothing to be said or even kind of thought about it. And again, emptiness or shunyata is the kind of liberation that we experience when we see insubstantiality, and we kind of penetrate that. So in terms of beauty, we perceive the world of sense desire, like the karma loka, as beautiful when it is in reality relatively unattractive. And through this reflection, we see the pure formless beauty of the unconditioned. And this, this is the essence of how beauty is a kind of path to insight, through seeing the kind of relatively unattractive nature of samsara. We see through into this kind of formless beauty of the unconditioned. And Bhante also talks about how, as we move towards the unconditioned, we enter this kind of formless liberation called the beautiful. And I really like this aspect. And he talks about entering this formless beauty, and he talked about that in his poem. And this formless beauty crystallizes into a figure of a Buddha or Bodhisattva. And he talked about it in his poem as being the beauty without form and without void. And it's the kind of subtler beauty that we experience when we move beyond the realm of sense desire. And this beauty without form and void is said to crystallize into the figure of Green Tara. Okay. So I'm just going to say a little bit about why we might wish to consider beauty as a kind of path to insight. And in a way, it's like, in a way, beauty is like a real gift. And there's something very compelling and direct about it. And perhaps it's easier to kind of come into relationship with than the other Lakshanas. I mean, we feel beauty very immediately when we witness it. And it kind of grounds us in the moment. And when we're receptive, we just have this very immediate and felt sense of beauty. It kind of takes us out of ourselves or something. It kind of takes us beyond our thoughts and our sort of narrow concerns. And it can kind of transport us just into a kind of realm of a kind of meaning and significance. Yeah. And also, I think in some ways it can be more accessible than the other Lakshanas. The idea, we can have quite a resistance to the idea that the idea around sort of non-self or impermanence. The idea that perhaps we don't exist quite in the way we think we exist. I think we can have a real resistance to that, and in a way, beauty is sort of more accessible. And I was thinking, when we see a beautiful sunset or something, it just sort of resonates in a more immediate way than perhaps the thought that, well, it's impermanent. It's just kind of fleeting or something, which can seem a bit abstract or something. And beauty is just very non-conceptual, isn't it? We feel it in the body. It's not a kind of thought thing, and also it has this sense of just being pleasurable. Actually, it can be uplifting. It inspires us. And again, I think that makes it perhaps more accessible than the other Lakshanas. And of course, it has this sort of transcendental aspect as well. And it was the poet Keats who said, "Beauty is truth, truth beauty." And I think that sort of really resonates with me, actually. That beauty just has this sense of the truth to it. Yeah. So Sangharakshita was very keen, and he made the point that that awareness of spiritual and transcendental beauty is far more important than awareness of the kind of relative lack of beauty of the kind of realm of sense desire, the karma loka. So it's not about not seeing the world as beautiful. It's more about recognizing that there are higher levels of beauty, that there is this kind of spiritual and transcendental levels of beauty. In fact, he says about this, he says, in the absence of any awareness of and delight in the beauty of the unconditioned, all our efforts to convince ourselves rationally that conditioned existence is unattractive. The result that despite our protestations, we shall continue to wallow in the mire of the karma loka. So So as I say, this is much more about moving towards that kind of deeper sense of beauty that we can find in the kind of spiritual and transcendental. And actually Bhante wrote about beauty as being the fourth Lakshana. He wrote about this was actually one of the last things he wrote about before he died, and he was just very keen to emphasize a path where the goal is kind of ideal beauty, and there is just this sense of finding this kind of increasing kind of appreciation for beauty. Okay, I haven't got that much longer actually, so I'm just going to say a couple of things about perhaps you or working with beauty in all aspects of our practice. So just this idea that sort of beauty can be the kind of container within which all our practice kind of unfolds. And one of the aspects of beauty that I think is really interesting is that we can see it in all we can see it in all sorts of ways. It can manifest in a kind of act of kindness or someone's look. And these are really important, I think, because they just give us the sense that actually the world does not necessarily work in the way we think it does. Beauty has this kind of indefinable quality. It's like it has this quality where there's just something beyond what we can perceive. There's just something about it that we can't quite touch. And normally we're very much caught up in our own kind of sense of self, aren't we, and our own preoccupations. We talk about the worldly winds and getting caught up in the worldly winds, and where we're very much the kind of center of our experience, and beauty just kind of reveals the potential of life or something, and its kind of possibilities. And secondly, I just wanted to say that sometimes the other lakshanas, this idea of impermanence and non-self, can seem a bit kind of nihilistic or something, or a bit cold. We might think that, well, how would it be if we saw through our sense of self? Would life become kind of meaningless or cold? And well, I think it's through beauty actually that we can really engage. We can really engage with the other lakshanas, because if we're receptive enough to beauty, then we will see the beauty in the other lakshanas. And the last point I want to make on this is that we can explore the lakshanas, all of them, through the arts, actually. And Sangharakshita was particularly keen that he placed a lot of importance actually on Western art, because and he talks about the kind of spiritual values and spiritual vision that Western art encompasses, and also how it can be a lot more accessible than the kind of Eastern equivalents from Buddhist traditions, because obviously we're just much closer to it kind of culturally. And he also talked a lot about how the spiritual values depicted in Western art can transcend the faith they are associated with. So yeah, yeah. And a good example of this is, William Blake, who was a Christian. He was this kind of mystic and visionary character. But his work is just full of the Dharma. It just kind of pours. It just kind of pours from his work. Okay, I just actually wanted to share an example of seeing the Dharma through kind of Western art, and I was going to share a poem with you, which will this is one of my favorite poems actually, and I'll just read it. I have seen the sun break through to illuminate a small field for a while, and gone my way and forgotten it. But that was the pearl of great price, the one field that had treasure in it. I realize now that I must give all that I have to possess it. Life is not hurrying on to a receding future, nor hankering after an imagined past. It is the turning aside, like Moses, to the miracle of the lit bush, to a brightness that seems as transitory as your youth once, but is the eternity that awaits you. Okay, so yeah, that's all I've got to say.